Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. In the next hour and a half, we will enjoy another two interesting parallel sessions. The first one will be moderated by Bernd Fesel, the chair of the European Creative Business Network, that will be joined by prominent speakers from Colombia, Denmark, France, and Indonesia. Together with them, he will prepare fertile grounds for policies to connect business and creativity. Hello, Bernd. Glad to have you here. Exactly 1 month ago, we were glued to the screens watching the European Creative Industry Summit that you organized. Congratulations once again for that great event and all the pre-sessions that led to it. Can you tell us one conclusion of the Berlin Summit that all the participants of today's event should know?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me and inviting me. It's a great pleasure to moderate this panel and to give you, out of the many learnings we had at the European Creative Industry Summit, just one major learning, which I think is so relevant for our topic today, how to connect business and creativity. We see that the European Union leads on the policy integration of the CCS in almost all policies and programs. However, national, regional, and city governments have a hard time keeping up, bringing together those policies, especially also now in the recovery after COVID-19. It's so important to look at a holistic recovery, holistic funding, including all sectors, and a holistic strategy. And exactly here is quite often a gap. Strategies to promote cultural creative industries are often either culture-driven or business-driven, because it's partly resonating with just one ministry in the government. Quite often it's even torn between the conflict of non-profit and the profit worlds within the cultural creative sectors. So in a nutshell, one of the learnings is we need an institutional innovation within governments to bring together an interdepartment policy. And this often leads also, I think, to intergroups in parliament, bring together parliaments, committees from economic, culture, and science. That would be the main learning, which I think is so important also to connect business and creativity as we are debating it here today. Yes, hello. Welcome to our panel here, out there, our global audience, and we are thankful for joining us. My name is Bernd Fesel, Director of the European Creative Business Network based in Rotterdam, founded in 2012. And I have the pleasure now to introduce, first of all, the topic, and then our distinguished four speakers. And then we will be having short presentations of 5 to 10 minutes, followed by Q&A, if you like, here also from the audience. We are a small group. Please feel invited and use our chat to ask questions to me or our fellow speakers. So our topic, connecting business and creativity. What does this really mean? We all know when an author writes a new book, an architect makes a new building, a filmmaker produced a new film. This is already connecting creativity and business, but it's within the cultural creative sectors. Today, we look also, in addition, into those connections reaching out. You know, like the filmmaker Herman Basker asks, why are you creative? And he asks this not only to Angelina Jolie or Quentin Tarantino, but also to the Dalai Lama and former President Bush. So reaching out of our sectors. This reaches into fields like the arts and health, IoT and buildings. It reaches to design for mobility. And just one example I want to point out to have a a clear-cut take on it, also designed for the digital economy. This is user interface design, and that's what you all know here by this little piece, and the app market included in our mobiles of today. This is a market running up to 200 billion app downloads per year in 2019 and turning into a revenue of $73 billion. So this shows a connection of creativity and business. And we all know it's a difficult connection to see because user interface design is such daily use that you almost oversee it as it is in use. So to talk about the diverse aspects of spillover into different fields, if it's tourism or others, I have the pleasure to welcome here our 4 guests. You have seen the slides already. So the first one I want to introduce is Chandra. He is representing the Indonesian Minister for Tourism and Creative Industries. He's director for the Inter-Institutional Relations at the ministry. He studied global development in Antwerp, and his career is a diplomat career, working in different embassies, also including Washington, D.C. Then we welcome Maiken, and I hope I speak a little bit correct. Please forgive me for misspelling. She is executive director at Creative Denmark, has a background in international marketing, public-private partnerships, and fosters products and competencies across the culture creative industries. So welcome from Denmark. Then our next guest and speaker is Errol from the Institut Français, the Director General. And his career has been taking him from governmental to cultural organizations. He is at home at both sides of those cultural spheres, and with his biography is well prepared to talk about spillover effects. He was Deputy Director at the Cabinet of the Minister of Digital Economy, Innovation and SME in France. In itself, if we would like to say a spillover ministry already, he has been Director General at the National Picasso Museum in Paris, and now he's acting director at the Institut Français. So welcome to him. And our next speaker is from Colombia, Amalia. She is now Director of Arts at the Ministry of Culture of Colombia. She studied literature, but also made a master's degree in communication of public and political institutions in Madrid. She worked at the ministry. She has been director of diverse projects and fairs like the book fair in Bogota or the Fantasy and Leisure Saloon. So again, a biography at home in both worlds, the governmental and the cultural. She has been until 2018 Director of Development and Communications at the Hay Festival in Colombia. So hello to Colombia, and I hope it's not too late or too early. No idea in what time zone you are, but here it's global time now. So now it's also time for our first speaker from Indonesia. Chandra, it's your floor.
Thank you very much, Bern. Hi, everybody. I'm here to represent the Minister for Tourism and Creative Economy, His Excellency Wisnu Tama Kusubandyo, who actually was scheduled to speak in this forum, but due to unavoidable circumstances, he couldn't make it. On behalf of the Minister, I would like to thanks the Ministry of Economic Development and Technology of Slovenia for inviting us. It is such a pleasure for Indonesia to be in this forum. This is a very important and strategic forum, especially in deliberating or discussing the development of. Ladies and gentlemen, in this hopefully five or a little bit introduction on how we approach the development of creative economy in Indonesia. I'd like to extend here is how we define the creative economy. We have already our law for creative economy. It was adopted last year by our parliament. It was still under the Indonesian Agency for Creative Economy, so it's ministerial level for creative economy. But it was then blended or merged with the Ministry of Culture for the last year, only in 1 year, this 1 year. First is that we define creative economy as an added value from culture, science, and technology. So it is an added value that we develop from culture, science, and technology. Based on the definition, we see the importance of increasing the capacity of the ecosystem. So we intend to create an ecosystem that is conducive to the rapid development. So it is not only the development but rapid development of creative economy. You know why? Because without government intervention, we strongly believe that creative economy can still develop, they can still increase, they can still grow, but we want to make them grow more rapidly. We want to make them grow faster. That is why we approach through the ecosystem. The ecosystem is mostly is that the how to put it, the lack of creative economy or the challenges that are faced by creative economy actors. The first one is research and development. Second one is the access to capital. The third one is infrastructure. This infrastructure can be IT or physical infrastructure. The fourth one is the marketing. The fifth one is the IP. This is very important. The intellectual property is very important because we believe, based on research, that the biggest added value actually created by the IP. The production itself perhaps can contribute to 20-30%, but IP can make the benefit of the creativity into multiple. And then the last one of the ecosystem is the special effort we dedicate to uh, to keep all those activities or program in harmony. We call this the interinstitutional relations. Before, under our agency for creative economy, we focus three targets for the development of creative economy. The first one is the employment absorption. How the creative economy can absorb employment in Indonesia or provide employment to our people. The last data shows that in 2018, we have around 17 million people works in the creative economy. The second one is contribution to PDB, to the GDP, the gross domestic product. The last data shows that creative economy in Indonesia contributes around 7.4 percent to our gross domestic product. And then the last one is how creative economy can contribute to our national export. The last data shows that uh, our creative economy contribute around 20 billion US dollars to our national export. Why then creative economy? It is the belief of our president, actually, Joko Widodo, on the importance of creative economy. Uh, the first one is the inclusivity. The second one is sustainability. With creative economy, there is no barrier at all. There is no gender. There is no capital, much capital needed. You can start even with only a pen, a pencil, and paper. You know, I always like to uh, 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 give example of one very young fellow, like 14 or 15 years old, from Toronto in Canada, when he invented the fidget spinner. couple of years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, and he can make good money with the idea. Uh, we always believe on the second one is the sustainability of creative economy. That is why we in Indonesia we'd like to bring the issue of creative economy to international level. You know why? Because mainstreaming the issue of creative economy to international level can contribute to the development in many developing countries, especially that we can help each other, we can work together, we can collaborate together among developing countries to enhance the capacity of our human resources or any other stakeholders of creative economy. That is why we organized the World Conference on Creative Economy, the first one, the first ever. It was 2018. In this, it was attended by 52 countries, representative from 52 countries, and 10 international organizations. The whole delegate, it was around 2,000 people. There are two important elements of the outcome of this uh, WCCE. The first one is the uh, the 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 Bali agenda tasked us to initiate United Nations resolutions on creative economy. That is why we initiated the draft resolution of International Year on Creative Economy and Sustainable Development that was adopted in December last year. The second one is the establishment of GISING. GISING is a global center of excellence and international cooperation for creative economy. We have established this center since September 2019. It was soft launch and it was intended to be officially launched uh, on March or April 2020, but due to this COVID-19 pandemic, we have to reschedule the launching. Distinguished participants, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, uh, since November last year, 2019, we merged the Indonesian Agency for Creative Economy with the Ministry of Tourism. The main reason of this merger is how we can make creative economy to contribute heavily to the development of tourism industry in Indonesia, especially with to complement to our strategy to increase the experience tourism uh, by promoting sustainable tourism development in the country. In this strategy, what we are doing is that we increasing the capacity of local talent in tourism destination to exploit local culture so that they can increase the attractiveness of the tourism destination. Again, in this particular strategy, we uh, we give focus to the ecosystem of the tourism industry. So we deal with the issue of the cleanliness, with the issue of health, with the issue of safety, with the issue of sustainable tourism in this area. We uh, we start to study and then to do research in several tourism destination, especially with regard to the local culture. Uh, we try to improve the capacity of local talents to increase how they can package the local culture to be one of very attractive activity that can be experienced by tourists in this area. Last but not least, what I want to mention here is the importance of international cooperation. We can have uh, we should help each other. We can share knowledge and experience between countries, between all the stakeholders of the industry, tourism industry or economy industry, because that is the spirit of creative economy actually, cooperation and collaboration, and that is the spirit of our ministry, international cooperation, 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 and cooperation. That's I end I stop there, Burn, and I'm looking forward to have a fruitful discussion with all the speakers and as well as participants in this forum. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chandra. We just learned that the merger of your ministries is already an example of what I pointed out, the institutional innovation we need within governments. You just seem to did this just 2 years ago by merging these ministries and bringing together those competences. And my one question would be on the fostering of the local ecosystem, of the local capacity. You just pointed out as the overall strategy for creative industries, you look not only in capacity, but also into marketing, IP, and most important of infrastructures. Do you also need to invest in infrastructures, in cultural infrastructures for your tourism strategy? Or is there already a sufficiently built infrastructure?
Well, thanks, Bern. I believe as what happened as well in many developing countries or even developed countries, when we have a culture in a local area or within local government, they always need a further assistance from central government. At least we provide them a seed infrastructure. So we help establish, for example, a creative hub that can be used also is a kind of this creative hub is a kind of physical infrastructure, so the local talents can meet, can increase their capacity to training, to technical assistance, uh, so we invite expert to give them training in the area. Of course, they need it, but still, how we the most important thing is how we can make the infrastructure sustain, because the the most important challenge is how to make local talents contribute positively or constructively to the sustainable program of the infrastructure.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. And I think this is really a global challenge we face, that the culture creative industries is kind of now taking, in some nations, they are already taking the lead on the topic of sustainability. In others, just are starting. Here in Germany, where I am from, our cultural ministry just started this year a mapping on sustainability and cultural institutions. So this is a new development, and great to hear that this is on your agenda. If you allow, there is one question from the audience which relates to innovation. To innovation, I just read it, is an alternative to the natural resources of any country, and intellectual property comes as a means of protection for innovation. So while that's not a real question, I guess the question would be, is there any need to protect also on the IP level local culture, or is it so unique that protection is not really an issue? But we all know protection of culture is not only IP, it's also heritage. Is there anything in your strategy on the protection as well?
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting question. I have to be honest here with you, but the protection of culture is one of the priority of our government, because we want we don't want to lose all this culture that are beneficial for our society, development of our society. But up till now, we have yet relate the local culture with the IP issue. We still have a lot of challenges to streamline the issue of local culture, the unique local culture, with the IP issue.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's also important to point out that there is not everything is easily covered in these challenges, and holistic strategies in ecosystems tend to also have blanks, of course. And I know for many other nations that there is a built-in tension between protection of heritage and tourism. It is also a matter of aligning it. So thanks so much, Chandra. And I have no further question from the audience. So in case anything else comes up, please feel free to put it in the chat. We have later on, again, a Q&A, not only to specific speakers, but to all. So please continue to feed in your questions. And now I'm happy to hand over the floor to Denmark, to Maiken. And you first of all have to tell me how I correctly pronounce your name, and then it's your floor.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And actually, you did it brilliantly. My name is Maiken Kalhave, and I'm the Executive Director of Creative Denmark. So thank you very much for the invitation today. I've been looking forward to joining the panel and to talk about something that is high on all of our agendas, namely creativity and creativity linked to business. So thank you for the invitation. As I said, I represent a public-private consortium, not-for-profit, established back in 2019. So we are quite young still. We are a result of a policy in Denmark, which was back in 2017, where the government decided to make effort for the creative industries in Denmark in terms of increasing growth within the creative industries. So they decided to make a joint platform together with two major business organizations here in Denmark, that being the Confederation of Danish Industries and the Danish Chamber of Commerce, together with a big philanthropical fund, Realdania, who works within the built environment and securing sustainability and quality within the built environment. They came together with a government represented by three different ministries. The Ministry of Culture being one of them, and then the Ministry of Industry, Business and Financial Affairs being the second one, and the third one being the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we're a joint venture, not for profit, between the three ministries and two business organizations and a philanthropical fund. The focal point of Creative Denmark is to create a joint platform for all the creative businesses or industries in Denmark in order to strengthen the collaboration between the creative industries and other industries, both nationally but also internationally, in order to increase innovation and support new solutions, not only in the creative sectors, but in all sectors, actually, being both healthcare, sustainability, food technology, etc. Another aim is to support establishing international relations and partnerships within the Danish creative industries and other international stakeholders. That's also a focal point for us. And the last one is to strengthen the international awareness about creative competences and solutions. Again, not only within the creative industries, but in a broader context. We, as I said, is founded by both governmental institutions, but also private institutions. And we lay upon a legacy, as you can say, because it has been attempted to create something like Creative Denmark in Denmark before, but that has been a result of a solely public setup or a solely private setup. And neither has worked before, because they wanted to create the joint venture, which allows for both going into the commercial issues of being industry, but also incorporating the political side of the issues. So this is how we work. We have partners, and obviously we work in partnerships only, because we're a quite small secretariat, and the need for partnerships is huge when we want to lift this agenda, not only partnerships in Denmark or within Denmark, but also internationally. So I think that was my introduction. I know it was a bit shorter than the earlier speaker, but I guess we have some time to catch up. So I guess that will be okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm just wondering, coming back to your newly founded entity, if you're looking to create the spillover effects with all sectors, is there some kind of natural sector to start, which are, at least in Denmark, quite close together already? Or do you have tools which are addressing the sectors all alike? Any kind of...
Yeah, no, we have selected a few sectors, and that also kind of stems out that Denmark has earlier worked with these public-private partnerships within different other sectors, and that being sustainability of the green sector, that being the food sector, both food technology, food production, but also healthcare. So it's those are the three sectors that we work very closely with in order to make it very visible how creative industries or the creative sectors or competences play into those sectors.
Yeah, and so I assume that you have already a tradition of creative industries in this field of the green economy, also in healthcare. I know that United Nations published extensively about those connections. Does it any examples spring to mind you could name to us? Is there any hospital you want to name, maybe to look in? What could be an example of creative industries and health?
A very good example is a company in Denmark called Coloplast. And Coloplast work with stomy. I don't know actually the English word for it. That's embarrassing. But they work with stomy. I think that's the English expression, where they have a huge design center there with many people working there in order to make the designs as great as possible. So actually it's a design-driven company, but it works within the healthcare sector.
Mm-hmm. I once experienced a spillover agency called Tilt. I think it's in Göteborg, and they also had projects in the healthcare sector together with performing artists. And they came up with the idea to have to switch roles so that the doctor is for half a day the patient. And they put him in bed, the doctor in bed, to experience how is it, to be in the patient's role, and from there on, to see the world differently, and then hopefully to improve services in the health sector. So I can tell from other nations that this is indeed a big sector. And of course, we know because of our older and older society that health services will be increasing constantly. Do you have another example for us, maybe from the food sector? And I think
I was just thinking if I can just stick to the healthcare sector, because now you just mentioned the hospital and the doctor patient part there. So I was thinking about the whole theme of healing architecture, which is a huge thing here in Denmark, that you actually work very proactive with architects on creating environments in the hospitals which can support or lead to greater health or becoming well sooner. And that can actually also be linked to healing music, which is also a focus area. So I think you have to, every time you walk around, or if you work with climate adaptation, for example, this is a big thing in all of our countries at the moment, where you have to look in climate adaptation. And you can do that in two ways. You can do it just by the pure function of wanting to lead the water away, or you can do it as a rehabilitation center for citizens in the cities. And a great example here in Copenhagen, where I live, the capital of Denmark, we have a very huge square in the middle of the city, which has been, it's called Israel's Plads, which has undergone a great renovation because they needed to have these great water reservoirs in the middle of the city when we have these 1,000-year rains and such. And now it's a center for basketball, for playing, for kindergartens, for schools to come all during the day and all night to play. And I just think that it's a great example where the creative industries has gone in and actually added the value times 100, where something could just be like a big water reservoir with a big fence around it. It's now actually a big asset for the city.
Yeah, thanks so much for pointing out. And I really love the phrase of healing architecture. There are so many buildings which are a visual insult to us. And I often think that we underestimate that buildings can make you sick as well, especially in economic crisis. This adds on top. Yeah. So thanks so much for those examples. There is one final question the moderator always have to ask. So, but this one is a really easy one. You know, as you are created so anew, and as you are public and private, your funding structure, is it also from public-private, or is it mostly public and added by partnerships, you know, once in a while? And how big is it? Are you up to spend 10 million, a million? Can you give us any clue about that?
Yeah, no, we're actually both public and private funded. We're on the state budget, and then the business organizations, the Confederation of Danish Industries and the Chamber of Danish Commerce, as well as the big philanthropical fund, they give an annual
fee,
seed money for our whole marketing consortium. And then we have different added partnerships. We have projects that we work within. So when you talk about the total finance, it's a bit difficult to say because it will differ from each year. But it is enough to have a secretariat of 5 to 6 people running year-round, working within this agenda.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much of unveiling this little secret. And we wish you that this startup, so to speak, is growing. And I also see that this is an institutional innovation. I was speaking at the very beginning, and even going well beyond the governmental cooperation. Yeah,
exactly.
About the full ecosystem. Yeah, so thank you so much. And now I have the pleasure to welcome our next speaker, Errol, Director General of the Institut Français. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Bernd. I'm very, very happy to be here with you. And I would like to thank all the organizers of the event for inviting me at this roundtable. I would like to just to say a few words about the Institut Français, which I have the honor to manage. The Institut Français is a joint government agency under the dual supervision of the French Ministry of Culture and the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we are in charge of all aspects of cultural diplomacy, we could say that. But we're also in charge of supporting cultural sectors, French cultural sectors abroad in their internationalization policies, and I think that's this is one of the aspects I will maybe develop in my my introduction. Well, just a few words about what is at stake, seen from France. In recent years, we have had many studies in France that have showed that there was a growing contribution of culture to our economy, especially in exports, and especially over the past 5 years. Let me maybe recall a few figures right here. What we call cultural and creative industries, CCIs, I will summarize like this. Well, actually, they're a key sector of the French economy. They have amounted before the crisis to almost 90 billion euros for turnover. And they have a very high rate of creation of new businesses, for instance, almost plus 15% in 2018. And we have had a main observation made in France already in 2012, that is that culture is an economic driving force for French economy, and it has more significance than, for instance, car industry or luxury goods. So this is very interesting. And from this observation, there was a gathering of actors of the cultural and creative world that have converged to create what we call France Creative, Creative France, which is an organization of private and public institution. And the Institut Français is a member of France Creative, alongside all the other players of the French cultural and creative industries. So also at stake here is we have very different economic models and very different respective weights of public and private institutions according to the cultural sectors. For instance, if we look at the book market in France, it represents every year a turnover of almost 6 billion euros, whereas the cinema industry in France is more than 4 billion euros every year. But if you look at the French video game industry, they generate more than 40% of their revenues abroad. And again, last year, the French music industry has recorded its 6th consecutive year of growth, of export growth. So these sectors, they have a strong economic value, but they also have a major political dimension in terms of influence, because it is also the dissemination of French creation, of French brands, of cultural moderns all around the world. So let me say that they contribute fully to France's position in the international arena. And I'm thinking here, for instance, of our presence in major art fairs, biennials, and other key events around the world. But I also think about, development of brands such as museums, for instance, the Louvre, the Centre Pompidou, etc. In that very specific context, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, has called for a large national forum on cultural and creative industries. It was in 2019. This is a sort of unprecedented mobilization to enhance cooperation between public institutions, the Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, agencies such as the Institut Français or also Business France, and also private sectors, companies, business associations. So the aim is also to promote cooperation between the private actors. And of course, in the export dimension, the idea is to help our CCIs to benefit from the very wide French cultural network all around the world. A few words about the crisis, because I think that today's crisis is strongly damaging these sectors. That is actually the case in France, and in some cases more than it is the case for other economic sectors. Culture was very strongly hit by the crisis. And it is also, since it is also a crisis of cultural and artistic mobility, we think that part of the solution is necessarily international on a global scale. And in that spirit, we, the government agencies, we decided to come closer together for external cultural action and for the promotion of French companies' exports. As the Institut Français, maybe a few words about what our action in this context. We support many different cultural sectors or disciplines, for instance, cinema, French language, visual arts, architecture, design, digital culture as well. And we can rely on a very vast network of French institutes and French alliances all around the world. And with all that, our ambition is to also to keep cultures alive, culture and cultures, and the influence of the creative sector internationally. This is really our one of our priorities today, is to focus on helping creative sectors gain visibility and strength abroad. So this is more important, of course, after the crisis, because the sectors will really need that. We try to concentrate on finding and identifying. We call that supporting emergence of new actors, new sectors. For instance, this is through aid to creation or aid for exchanges. For example, through the acquisition and distribution of first films by young French directors. We try to support emerging talents, distributing prizes that also act as quality labels for exports. For instance, the artist with the Marcel Duchamp Prize, which is quite famous. And we also have residency programs to contribute to support the emergence of artists, whether they are French or foreigners, of course. We also try to enable creators to gain visibility in certain markets with tours, festivals, and we try to reinforce the international recognition of their work. We invite foreign professionals to discover the French contemporary culture. We try to increase the performance of French cultural industries around the world, and there is a leverage effect on the actions, because we try to help them go from the creative to the economic. That's very important, of course. So we think our action as an accelerator for the presence abroad of our creators and of all the cultural initiatives that distribute them commercially. That's also important, and we call that international projection. This is, of course, the challenge of international events such as art fairs, biennials, major film events, and also the invitations to book fairs, for instance. Well, I would say that the importance of public policies in support of cultural and creative industries is significant, and is expected to be even more significant in this period of crisis and of strong competition after the crisis. And I will just take a few more examples. Let's take the example of video game in France. This is today a market of more than 5 billion euros and more than 30,000 jobs. So this is a sector of continual innovation. We have to think on artificial intelligence. We have to think of blockchain, etc. And there is a need for a fruitful ecosystem. And in the case of France, we have tried to achieve that with dedicated measures. For instance, the video game tax credit and the video game support fund that really help create a favorable ecosystem. But we also note that there is a necessary adaptation of public policies to support the emergence of new creative formats that do not exist yet or try to exist. For instance, if we think about the web creation or mobile creation, podcasts, which are very popular with the younger generation, and for which consumption is increasing rapidly. I think we have to find new measures and new measures to help these emerging sectors. Lastly, if we consider the issue of broadcasting platforms, which are a considerable economic challenge for producers, for digital creation, well, we think the question of content takes more importance, and contents have obvious connections with the issue of influence or soft power for nations. And once again, the question arises of concerted action, but I think also on a European scale, and I think this is very important. So you see the challenges are very wide, but I think that the creative sector, even with the health crisis, even faced with technological transformation, reveal its ability to renew itself, to reinvent itself, and to continue to enhance human relationship. So, well, as you can see, in spite of all the current difficulties, this is still an optimistic message. And, well, I would be delighted to continue the exchange with all of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's really true. You show that there is a spillover of optimism with all those strategies you're pointing out here. And I would like to dive into one spillover, just in difference to the other colleagues we had yet so far listening to, is the spillover into the exports you have been talking about. The global market is, of course, a big challenge for Europe in general, but you pointed out to some tools you have to drive forward, exports and French culture in the global market. And of course, this export, if you pointed to the Marcel Duchamp Prize award, this is kind of a naughty award as well. It's not just, the economic award, but it's also a statement on the understanding of artistic freedom. What Duchamp did, he challenged traditions at his time. So how much is the export of economic French culture also a statement, for democracy and open-mindedness? Is this both?
Well, it's very interesting that you asked this question, because in our missions, we have to promote, of course, French culture, but we also try to promote French values. For instance, democracy, human rights, all the values that are fostering the debate in France. So we think that, for instance, creativity is necessarily linked to the freedom of creativity for the artists. They have to be to feel able to deal with almost any issue that they want to raise. And so I think this is very interconnected. If we promote the export of our cultural creators, innovators, we also have this is also an export of our values. Namely, we want to give them as much space as possible to express themselves, to find new ways of inventing the future, whether in the cultural fields or other fields of innovation. And this liberty that we want to give to our artists, to our creators, to our innovators, this is also a value that we want to export. So I think there is a spillover effect of values and artworks.
And
actually.
artworks,
This
yeah.
is the way we conceive that. And this is in our mission.
Yeah. Great to hear this double-sided mission, so to speak. What does this mean for the funding structure in government? Is this funding coming from the economic ministry or from the cultural ministry, or is it part of the foreign affairs funding? How is this structured?
Well, as far as we are concerned, we are funded with by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Culture. But as far as financial support for our French cultural and creative industries is concerned, there is also, of course, an intervention from the French Ministry of Finance, because it's as I said, it's a huge part of our economy. And if you take, for instance, the crisis and all the measures that were designed to help, a sort of rebounds after the crisis, to help, our companies support, to support these difficult times. Of course, there is a sort of a repartition of all competent ministries. So for instance, if you take one's cultural sector, you have support from the Ministry of Culture, which is fueled by the Ministry of Finance. Well, this is a sort of cooperation, intergovernmental cooperation, to help, go through the crisis, for instance. But this is also the case structurally.
Okay, thank you so much. One last topic I want to point out is your word of the soft power you were talking about in relation to content. EU Commissioner Gabriel, who has been speaking here as well in the morning, she pointed out at the beginning of the year that we are in a war on content between China and the United States. Mm-hmm. Now, the phrase of soft power is quite often also a phrase of the Chinese policy. Do you see yourself in competition on this global scale? Is it this idea, or is the idea of soft power also coming from this French tradition? We all know and love the French French exception, having national quotas for cinemas and others, and thus protection also your culture as soft power, as not being overtaken by global companies. What is the incentive of soft power here?
Well, I think we have to be on both sides, actually, on both issues, because, for instance, we have a very particular system, it's true, with a lot of state intervention to support the cultural sectors, which would not be immediately profitable. We try to help them compete internationally. So, and we have, of course, quotas and such measures. We have tried, and we still try to promote those kind of cultural policy on the European level, because we think it's good measure. And if we take the example of the French film sector, film industry, it has well resisted the international competition, also because there was, this system that is very supportive, and at the end of the chain, there is a lot of jobs that were saved or preserved in France in those cultural sectors. Well, it's true that new countries in this field, for instance, China, but others as well, have invested a lot of time, efforts, and money in this soft power initiatives. I think the European Union has a lot to do also with that. So it's not a question of trade battle or things like that. It's very different. It's also a question of values and exchanging. But we think that France is not the only example of an active, policy toward culture. But we can contribute, and we can help. Building, like a European soft power. I think it's very important to participate to that, and not to consider only national. We are a national structure, but we try a lot to think on the European level, because that would be also specific, I think.
I know the Institut Français is also cooperating, I think, in Oynik with many other national institutes on the cultural side. And maybe that's something Europe can learn from the national states, look into soft power approaches. This is not a European mainstream phrase yet. We will see how that develops. So thank you so much. And now I think it's time really to look into our last speaker, to Amalia from Colombia, Director of Arts at the Ministry of Culture. It's your floor, and we are happy to have you here. Most welcome.
Thank you so much. I don't know if I'm sharing my screen.
Not yet. Not yet.
I think I am, I think.
Okay.
So, well, I work at the Colombian Ministry of Culture. I'm currently the Director of Arts at the Colombian Ministry of Culture. I'm very happy that I was invited to this forum, because we're actually going straight forward to what you were talking about at the beginning of this conversation. For the past, well, this is not something that just popped out of the blue. Colombia has undergone a very conscious work with public policy, going through to what we now call our orange economy, or creative industries economy. So what's our message here? Basically, that orange economy is a development model based on diversity and creativity as pillars of social economic transformation for Colombia from the regions. Many of you know, or the ones that are not very aware of how Colombia is now. Colombia is a Latin American country surrounded by two oceans, both Pacific and the Caribbean Ocean. We have various countries that are our neighbors, and it's a multilingual, multicultural, and very diverse country. We currently have 64 indigenous languages and 5 regions with different cultures in each region. So we are very proud of the content in creativity and arts and culture all around our country. So what are we talking about right now? There's a little sound that I'm going to. There we go. So how do we think about this? How do we go around culture and creativity? So we've divided the sectors. One is arts and heritage, which holds visual arts, performing arts, tourism and heritage, education, gastronomy, and handicrafts. Then we have cultural industries such as the publishing sector, phonographic sector, and audiovisual sector. And then we also look into functional creations, new media, and content software, such as digital media, design, and advertising. So all of these come into account into our orange economy or creative industries economy. As you know, most of you have talked about this, both the orange economy or creative industries economy and the digital economy have something in common in between. So we all are looking, as Errol just talked about, and most of you have talked about the importance of looking into all these little links that we have in those two scenarios. So we have like three areas. One is strengthening and generating opportunities. The other was the promotion of diversity of cultural expressions and knowledge and public innovation. So let's look rapidly into the strengthening and generation of opportunities. So we have various strategies. One is the development of orange development areas. These are creative zones, like different neighborhoods that have been focused into creative industry scenarios. Some are into visual arts, some are into wider range of creative industries. And we had as a goal to create 9 what we call ADNs, or áreas de desarrollo naranja, development areas of orange economy. And we are now counting 27, and we're in the middle of our government. So this has been really, really endowed by many of Colombia's local mayors and directors. So this is going in on a very good and steady pace. We're looking onto training, investment, and institutional articulation, which I will talk to you about very soon later on, and the strengthening of the environment for sustainable development through culture, arts, and creativity. And regarding public policy, we have to really take into account 4 laws that we have been working on for the past years. One is the law on economic growth. The other one is the law that we have since 2011 called the Public Shows Law, that actually changed the way we have been able to construct and strengthen scenic arts infrastructure all around our country. It's just that when you pay for a ticket, some of this money goes into a fund at the Ministry of Culture. The Ministry of Culture then gives that back to the locality or to the municipality where this money was made from. And this will be able to be invested usually in infrastructure. But after the pandemic situation, this we took out a new law that made this more flexible. And now you can actually, the mayor's office can actually open a new line that will help creation and education services for culture. Then we have our National Development Plan and our cinema law, which also changed totally the way that Colombians look into cinema. Before this law, Colombia was not even known for its movie industry. Now we have important directors, producers, lighting instructions. Colombia has been converted into a hub for the industry of cinema in the world. So this has been an immense change for our culture. Regarding diversity, we are working on memory workshop schools and traditional workmanship, traditional funding programs for cultural institutions for creators, and circulation. Of course, circulation is really very important, not only local circulation, of course, international circulation. And around this, we have 3 laws that are important. One is our public libraries law, the general law of culture, and our economic growth law. Then we have knowledge. So how do we go around strategic analysis, information systems, and public policy design? One is our Orange economy policy. We are now looking really strongly on cultural diplomacy policy, cultural tourism policy, our national qualifications framework, and our sacred sites policy. I would like to point out right now on our national qualifications network. In Colombia, we don't have a system like you have in Austria or Germany, where people who who do not go to university actually have their métier as something that's important. If you're a carpenter or a woodman's work or something like that in Colombia, that does not have a title. So you will not be able to work in the state, and you will not be able to have that as a title of your own. So we're working really hard on having these qualifications so that people that work in those areas can actually work and have a better life. And then how do we get here? So as I told you at the beginning of my speech, this is not something that just came out of the blue. We've been working on this since the beginning of the Ministry of Culture, starting on the 1982 Mondiacult, and then the Ministry of Culture was created in 1997, based on our political constitution in 1991. Since then, as you can see here, and if anyone is interested in this information, of course, we would love to share it with you and the people who are listening to this roundtable. We have tons of, many steps that we have taken to get to 2020. Here you will see our national heritage law, the law I was telling you about 2011 for public shows, the filmic law in 2012, that have actually really, I'm not going to give you many data on this because I don't have enough time, but it has really changed how we look at culture and how we look on how both public and private funding is important for our cultural system to thrive and to be healthy. So this is really important. As you were talking about at the beginning of this conversation, you were looking at how it is important that we work with many institutions. So what has happened with our economy, Orange Economy Law, is that it has made it possible for us to create the Orange Economy Council, which is conformed by all these institutions that I'm going to translate for you because I just found out they're in Spanish. So it's the Ministry of Culture, our National Department for Planification, the Department of Statistics, FINDETER, which is our National Development Finance institution, our National Direction for Intellectual Property, our Ministry of Finance, our Ministry of Interior, our Ministry of Education, Ministry for Work, the Ministry of Communications and Technology, and our Ministry of Commerce and Tourism. So we're all working together as a whole state towards the strengthening of the creative industry and the whole Orange economy. So here, at the start, I'm not going to take too much time on this, but we thrive on 7 I's. So it's information, institutions, infrastructure, industry, integration, inclusion, and inspiration. So all of these institutions work together so that we can build upon the strategic pillars so that we can go forward so that this plan is permanent and keeps on going. Regarding some data, we have an important fund that is funded by our pension system that has been able to give vitality pensions to people who work in the cultural sector with money they already have and they had not used for the past 20 years. So now we have been able to give all these people that are over 65 years old a vital pension. We have 53 cultural entrepreneurship projects in 19 departments. Colombia has 32 departments. This is our Orange economy tables are in 17 parts of the country. And we, of course, hold tons of festivals and cultural events in 32 departments. That's what we do from the Ministry of Culture. Ministry of Science has invested 167.8 billion for research and creation processes related to the Orange economy. So we're working with the Ministry of Science, with the Ministry of culture. Then we have SENA, which is our institution that works on technology programs, technical programs, not university, but technical programs. Impulsa, that is an institution that works on credit for various areas of our economy. Bancoldex, which is our third degree bank. ProColombia, which works on international tourism and commerce. So this is everything that has to do with Colombia in for exports and so on. And then we have an important public sector investment that is seen on this slide with tons of millions of dollars in royalties, tax benefits, and direct investment from public entities. So what do we do? What do we have now? Hearing our colleague from Denmark, after all this was arranged, we created a public-private entity called CoCrea, Colombia Crea Talento, Colombia Creates Talent, because we brought out a new law that will give the possibility of people who invest in culture 165% discount on their tax income tax. So this has just started. 3 months ago, we put our first stimuli out, and we're hoping that to be a very important way to have new funds into the cultural sector. Because the Ministry of Culture has some funds, but we do have to work not only with the private sector, but with the public sector all around our country. So this is, in a nutshell, what we are working on right now at the Ministry of Culture. We are really very happy that you have invited us to this forum, and we, of course, would love to participate. Indonesia has been one of our examples, and we always are looking for what Indonesia has to offer. We work closely with France for a long, long time. So we're longtime friends. And so I'm sure that we'll be able to work on this and other themes soon.
Thank you so much, Amaya. And this was quite a big nutshell, I have to say. And I think we have to rephrase your title. You're not just Director of Arts, but at least of Artistic Innovation, seeing all the combinations you manage here in government. And that's one of my curious questions to you. This council, which was created out of the Orange Law, you showed us this slide with all the different partners in it. Is this a council established by law so that those partners must participate?
Yes.
Or is it a voluntary council?
No. It's established by law, and it has to meet at least 3 times a year. The president actually is the head of this council.
The president of Colombia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, President Duque, one of his most, he's funded on creative industries and the orange economy. He actually wrote a book while he was working at the Inter-American Development Bank regarding this apuesta. I forgot the name for apuesta in English. This bet he had, and the whole government is working on creative industries. So that's why this is like a big locomotive that's working together towards creating the pillars that would make this possible for the creative industry to keep thriving and competing and keep funding and giving great revenues for the IBP.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. I think that's a really important point here for all to note that, at least it needs sometimes also the top-down initiatives to create innovation in governments. And as you showed here, this is nicely combined with the local innovation and the bottom-up innovation. If you look at your orange development areas, how nicely they have perceived. So this seems to be a simultaneous movement you have in the last 10 years. of the top-down innovation and the bottom-up one. And the last question relates also to a player you pointed out, the research and innovation.
Yes.
If you look at the OECD definition globally, what is innovation? The arts and culture are not naturally springing to your mind. Artistic innovation, cultural innovation is sometimes still seen as a second best innovation. Is this different in Colombia?
That's an interesting question. I think we believe that arts and culture is naturally innovative. But that's why it's important to work with technology and science and try to level all these to the same degree. Because sometimes people who work in technology or science believe that they're more profound maybe, or are more innovative because they work with technology or with science, and that their degree of investigation gives them a power up. When actually, when you make them all work together, it makes like a huge positive bomb, as I would say. So
yeah,
now
indeed,
now,
I think you are in your work here describing yet another interesting spillover into research and into technology.
Exactly.
And also
exactly.
leading to a different perception of innovation, so to speak, as non-tech innovation, as we here say.
Exactly, because we are, as our colleague from Indonesia was telling us, we still have to thrive on guaranteeing that our heritage and our uniqueness, that we don't lose this, so that we can be innovative without losing our identity. So this is really important for us. So we have to understand that. For example, my job is to make public policy for the arts. That is dance, music, theater, circus, visual arts. I'm not in charge of movies and the audiovisual because we have a law for that. So there's a whole direction for movies and audiovisual. But we work together under the same vice ministry. The ministry has two vice ministers, one for creative and orange economy, and one for heritage and development. So the direction of arts is under creative and orange economy, because we believe that if we make it possible for the creative side to be strengthened, the people who want to one day have entrepreneurship around the arts will be more prepared than if we don't take this into account. So we always have to find a way to make a nice equilibrium between entrepreneurship, creation, and the right of people to understand the arts and have them into their account freely and in a democratic way.
Yeah, thank you so much. Those would be my questions, my curious question as a moderator. We still have another 8 or 9 minutes to go. I'm just wondering if here any of the other speakers might have, and of course I'm pretty sure, you might also have a question to one of your fellow speakers, something which you would like to ask. I'm just looking here if we have any questions from the audience. We just have a fan here for Denmark, for Maiken. I think you will know her. Marlene Johansen is just sending best greetings, and she's proud of the job you're doing for Creative Denmark. Not really a question, but I thought you should hear that. Otherwise, Marlene will tell me of not having told you. And then we have another question relating on the shape of spaces and buildings. Yeah, we touched on that already, on the healing buildings. Is there any other question from your side? Otherwise, we are happy to go back to the general forum. No, okay. So maybe yeah, Amalia, you have a question?
No.
No, okay. So maybe I just then do a little wrap up on a very systematic level. Maybe we should really recognize the topic of spillover is an international one. It's not just an economic one. It's just as well about diplomacy as much as it is about values. If it's local values in terms of protection heritage, or if it's values in terms of diplomacy, protecting freedom of speech. So here's a double-sidedness of those values as well. And we saw spillovers into such areas as technology and research. And I can maybe report here from Germany that the Ministry of Economics just started last year its first innovation fund for non-tech innovation. So this is quite also, an attempt to break the silos. We see here in traditional understanding of innovation, and that's maybe the biggest spillover of creative sectors in general. And that's something artists are used to do anyway, challenge understanding of its society, of its research, of its values. So I think that's a mind opener for international exchange in general. So I think it's really valuable as this Creative Forum is inviting us to look on the spillover of business and creativity, that we also combined it, into the sector of creativity, business, and also non-business social innovation. And I think I'm really happy to see how closely this here was linked in all speakers. Yeah, so thanks so much for opening up this topic so broad, and I hope we could offer our audience a broad insight and also motivate them to engage into spillover wherever they are and let us know what they do. So thanks again to everybody here in the room. And then I wish the general conference a good success for the rest of the day. Okay, bye-bye everybody. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bernd, for this great debate, and thanks to all the speakers. We will see you quite often in the coming months in the preparation of the European Creative Industry Summit next year that we will host as the presidency of the Council of the European Union. We very much look forward to this cooperation. But maybe now you could sum up in a few words the panel for all those participants that listened to another panel in the business section. Maybe if you can just sum up in 2-3 sentences for you the main messages of this panel.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. This panel touched on spillovers not only in the business field, mostly here in the field of health economy, architecture, but also cultural tourism. But it also extended its debate of spillovers into the field of diplomacy, of global soft power debates, but also how to understand innovation and research in the future. This is the wrap up in a nutshell. Maybe most important also that spillovers have always to respect the heritage and autonomy of the arts. And that's the base it strives on. So business is in fact an add-on to the freedom of expression. We add the freedom of the entrepreneur. That might be the balance to strike with those spillovers.